It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day. And yes, it is truly a beautiful day. Welcome to the BNS podcast. This is your host, Ike O. And my guest today is Charity Castro. For those who are watching us from anywhere in the world, it is good evening, good morning, and good night because our audience are global. So we just have to do what we have to do to get you guys all warmed up. Now, today's story is so unique, very, very unique. You're going to say, oh, we've heard this kind of story before, Ike. Yep. But hers is special. Why? Because she is unique. Charity, welcome to the Broken Up Shattered podcast, the BNS podcast, for the very
Thank
first time,
you.
hopefully not the last. How you doing, Charity?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
Great. Charity, your story is a story that one can say, oh, I've heard it before. But there's a unique twist to us. Can you take us back to the moment when you decided to use your voice and your platform to discuss and empower others who are going through abuse and divorce?
Absolutely. When I realized that my voice needed to be heard was I was walking through a very lonely and dark season. And when you walk through loneliness, there's times where the devil can plant things in your mind to make you feel as though you've gone crazy or um, this is only something that ever happens to you and there's something that's wrong with you and you're broken and you're discarded and there's nothing, you have no more value left on your life. And I had reached out to a friend, a very close friend that had walked through something similar before me. And I began discussing with her some things I was feeling. And I was like, I feel like I'm going crazy. And she assured me, no, you're not going crazy. This is completely normal. This is part of the process. This is how things go for the average person. And with that realization, I realized there's going to be more people out there. And of course, I speak primarily to women, but there's going to be more people out there that are going to go through a similar situation and feel lost and feel like they don't really know what is up, what is down, what is right, what is wrong, and they're going to question every decision that they make on whether or not it is something that is going to be foundational or not, and they just begin to question themselves. And so from that moment on, I realized that I wanted to make my voice heard, to let others know that they're not alone, that they're not crazy, that there's certain parts in the grief journey that are completely normal and it's all part of the healing process. And ultimately, I just want God to get glory from my story.
The grieving process. There is a process to grieve, and you know it, and I know it. And take it from a man who has gone through divorce, so I know what you're talking about. It's the loss, it's the pain, it's when you start questioning yourself and your self worth and your self value. Um, and a lot of men go through the same thing. I know women think it's only men, but you ended just now by saying you want God to get the glory for your story. Use this platform and share your story.
Sure. So I am walking through a domestic violence divorce that has turned very ugly. And I have three beautiful children out of my marriage that are very young. So there's a heavy load that comes from that. At the time, my youngest was only 7 months old, but now they are 4, 3, and 2 years old. They are the light of my life. Some people could look at children from a marriage that ended in divorce and look at it as a burden, but they truly are my shining lights, my shining stars, and what keep me going and motivated. And they're actually what brought me through this process, because I knew that I couldn't just sit in a hole, that I had three small children depending on me. And so I had to get my act together and get myself together and just get up and make it happen every single day. So we were married for just shy of 5 years. A lot of infidelity, emotional abuse, physical abuse. It would usually turn very physical when an affair was discovered. And it just increasingly got worse as time went on. Each time, each attack would be, worse than the time before. But the worst that it turned was December of 2023, just 9 days before Christmas. And it was an attack that should have taken my life. But by the mercy and the grace of God, I am still here today to share my story and to sound the alarm for others, to let them know that there is hope, there is help, and there is life on the other side of abuse. And, I just want to remind somebody that if you've walked through abuse, whether it be in a marriage or be in a home that you've grown up in, or however that looks for you, there is, you still are valuable. You still have worth. And there is something beautiful that can be made out of your story. God specializes in taking messes and making them absolutely beautiful and making them masterpieces.
That's correct. Wow. So the alarm you're sounding is?
The alarm that I'm sounding is, especially when there's children involved, you've gotta get out. You gotta, make a better life for you and your children. For me, that probably aha moment was when I was sitting in the police station, going through, given my side of the story and the interrogation, if you will. The police officer left, and the social worker came in, and she sat down and she said, "Do you understand how serious this is?" And of course I was like, yeah, I mean, no man should ever lay a hand on a woman, and vice versa. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty serious. If the police have to be involved, I believe it's serious. And she said, "No, do you understand how close you were and are, if you continue in this relationship, to death?" And I said, "No, I guess I don't. I guess I don't understand what you're saying." So she showed me on a piece of paper, but they refer to it as an escalation of events, and it starts at the very bottom of where a relationship tends to start out at, and it usually starts out in the love bombing process when it comes to usually abusive relationships. And she said, "This is where you started. These are the notches that it tends to go up. Sometimes, not every person experience every single notch on the ladder, but then it'll end. The very top, tippy top is death. Is the spouse or the significant other ending in death." And I was just one tier below that. And she said, "I need you to understand that statistically speaking, if you stay in this relationship, that the next time this happens, you probably won't be here to speak on it." And that final attack, there was a moment in that final attack where, of course, I feared for my life, and I didn't know how things were going to end. But at the same time, I felt in the moment of the fear, the panic, and all of those things, of feeling like I was indeed fighting for my life. I also simultaneously felt God there with me. I felt the presence of the Lord. And I felt like God told me, "You need to speak. You need to use your mouth and your voice, and you need to speak." And so I did. And the only thing I said was, "Are you going to kill me?" Through a strained voice, I looked and I said, "Are you going to kill me?" And when I said that, it was almost as if he kind of snapped out of it. For a second, he was still very angry, still very mad, but the intensity died down. And he did continue to taunt me a little bit further, but then did let me go. And the first thing that I did was I picked up the phone and I called my pastor. I'm very close to my pastor. He's a father figure in my life. Him and his wife have been more like parents to me. They've been probably the strongest constants in my life. They've known me my entire life. And I called him and I was like, "I don't know what to do." And he lives 30 minutes away from me. And he said, "Charity, there's no way I can get to you in a timely fashion." He said, "I think this has gone on long enough." He said, "I think it's time to call the police." And he had, to preface, he had never hindered me from calling the police up until this point, but this was the the most violent that it had got at this point. So I did call the police, and that actually was the best thing that I had ever done, because up until that point, I didn't even realize how severely dangerous of a situation we were in. So he was arrested, he was removed from the home. And then shortly thereafter, I realized, just in a less than a week's time, the first few days I was living in shock almost. It was a traumatic experience. And after a few days, I realized, wow, there's peace in this home. This is what peace feels like. My children, I remember my children were following me through the house, mom, 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 very, very small toddlers. And I turned around and I said, what? Just simple tone like that. And they all three jumped back, sort of in fear. And I looked at them and I just started crying. And I said, babies, you're not going to have to live life in fear. Mama's changing things, and it's starting today. And that's been my driving force. And that's when I say, like, I did it for my children. That's the absolute utmost reason why I drew that line in the sand and said, as for me and my house, we're not going back. We're not crossing this line. There was a short period of time where he didn't return to the home, but he did. I had lifted protective orders because he said he wanted to make things right, wanted to work things out. So we did proceed with caution. My pastor and my brother were very involved during that time frame. But then within only 6 weeks' time, he started getting violent in manner again. And so I said, this is, unfortunately, it's time to move on. So I put the protective orders back in place and I filed for divorce. And I have been doing it all on my own now for close to 18 months. And my middle daughter is considered special needs. And I've watched her just grow and flourish, all three of them, honestly. But something special when you have a particular child labeled medically, and to see them begin to yes, yeah, it's been beautiful, and watch God, perform that miracle. I do want to add, sometimes I feel like as Christians, as believers, when we talk about miracles, we expect an instantaneous miracles. And while there are those, and those are beautiful, there's also miracles that happen that take time, that are processed, that happen over time. And then when you look back, you go, whoa, this is where we started, and this is where we're here. God did something here. This is a miracle. And
you're looking at one of those now.
I'm sorry?
You're looking at one of those now.
Yes.
Oh,
yes. I believe that. I believe that. I say that all the time over me and my children. We're walking, talking, breathing miracles.
Yeah. Wow. Listen to your story. The common question people always ask Charity is the red flags, right? Did you see them initially? And when you did, or did you not see them? But if you did you overlook them, or did you feel that they were not red flags?
Yeah, absolutely. There was of course, looking back, hindsight is 2020. Looking back, I see a lot of red flags. There were red flags in the beginning that I did recognize, but also during that time, he wasn't living for the Lord. And so there were certain things I did overlook because I thought, oh, well, that's under the blood now. He's living a changed, different life. And so I really did, and not to discredit those that do change and that the Lord does work,
Excuse me.
A massive change in their life. But for him, there were some things that were red flags. There were also other things that I would ask questions about that were not answered in honesty. And so our foundation from the very beginning was built on a facade, built on a foundation of lies. And we all know that when there's a foundation of lies built, it's bound to crumble. There's a lot of things that I was told and different things that came to me after our separation that I never knew. And had I known going into the marriage, I probably would not have married him. And I say probably because, I mean, some people would say, oh, you would definitely not. But I say probably because that's my assumption. You never know exactly what you'll do until you're there. But so yeah, there definitely were red flags that I both overlooked and do see more firmly now than I did then.
Wow. We're going to take a break at this point, and when we come back, we'll continue this conversation, and I have more questions for you.
Perfect.
Thank you. And we are back. For those of you who were not here for the first part, my guest is Charity Custo. Charity is now a single mother, correct? Yeah.
Correct.
Living with 3 beautiful kids. Has gone through an abusive marriage. And is the divorce over, or you're still going through the divorce?
Still going through the divorce. Unfortunately, it's been a long process, and you know, when you're in a controlling situation, they don't like to let go of that control. And one of the elements we're dealing with is he's fighting the divorce. So, but I do believe I have a peace about it that we are nearing the end. And you know, there's times where you just have to walk by faith and not by sight, and know that God's got it all worked out.
So is he fighting the divorce, or is he fighting to get back the relationship?
He's fighting the divorce, and he believes that I'm trying to remarry, which is not true at all. But and it really doesn't matter. But he believes
if it was true.
Yes, yes. So he believes I'm trying to remarry, and so he believes that he's hindering me for remarrying. So he's trying to prolong the divorce to get back at me. But the fact of the matter is I don't really care. Like, I don't care if this thing takes years and years. Like, it's not changing the fact of the matter of what is going on. And I don't say that disrespectfully. It's just, for me, I've got a son and I've got 2 girls, and I don't want either one of them to think that is the example of what a marriage should be, or what a man or father should be. And so I'm fighting tooth and nail to make sure my children know and are exposed to what a true marriage, what a true man, what a true father is supposed to look like. And I've done so as much as I can to my ability. We're surrounded by amazing people through our church and church family. We have an amazing family who's not blood to us, but they're an amazing family to us. They're a family from our church that have stepped up, and they're like grandparents to my children. My children ask to call them every single day, and they've really stepped up and been there for us. And that's just one example of the many examples that they now have to look up to, and to see what that is supposed to look like. And that's been kind of one of my driving forces, is because I don't want my children to be confused as to what a marriage is supposed to look like.
So would you say that he was a good husband, a good father?
He was a pretty absent father. He wasn't around very much. I actually used to even joke in our marriage that I was a single wife, because he was not present often at all. So as there have obviously been difficulties being a single mom, I think one of the reasons why to some it's looked effortlessly in the transition is because I already knew what it was like to take care of everything on my own, the household and all of that stuff. Obviously, there were some things that I had to learn to do differently or to change differently, and, you know, restructuring budgets and all of that fun stuff that comes with it. But I had already kind of experienced what it was like to do it on my own, because he wasn't around often. He didn't like me to leave the kids with him. You know, I had to do my grocery shopping at night after everybody went to bed, because it was obviously easier for me to grocery shop without 3 small children.
Mhm.
But he didn't want to have to watch them while I grocery shopped either. So he would ask me to put all of the kids to bed. I'd put the kids to bed, and then I would do our grocery shopping after everybody was in bed and asleep.
All right, let's move a little bit to different direction because of time. So the focus it will be about your ex or your spouse that you're going through a divorce, and I wish both of you all the best. Really, um, I don't think there's anybody that God has really created that is evil. If you look back now, there might have been some things that happened in his life, and I'm not making excuses for him to be an abusive husband, but there might be some traumatic experiences that he's had and never addressed those things that keep on showing up, what people might refer to as demons in his life, right? But we know these are character traits or things he saw growing up, or maybe he picked up among his peers that allowed him to address life through this process. And so my prayer is that he also would find peace as you have found peace, Charity, in moving forward. Doesn't mean that the relationship has to come back. It just means that you wish him well as a believer, so he can find that peace that he actually truly needs, which is what the redemption power does to all of us. Uh,
Right.
Having said that, someone is watching you now, listening to you, and saying, "So, what were the biggest challenges you face, and what things are you doing, or did you have to do since you left that traumatic and toxic relationship that you can advise somebody both spiritually and emotionally or personally?"
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think it's one of those things of you choose your hard, right? Marriage is hard, divorce is hard, you choose your hard. And so, yeah, divorce is very difficult. Yes, I left a difficult marriage, but it didn't mean that all my problems went away walking away from
Mhm.
that. One of the probably the toughest struggles for me personally is feeling almost isolation, because you're so stuck in everything that you got to do, and it kind of feels like a rat race, a hamster wheel, if you will. And so when you become isolated from focusing on everything you're trying to do, accomplish all your goals, taking care of the kids, getting them to and from doctor's appointments, etc., um, when you know we know that there's power in people coming together, and so when you're pushed away and you're isolated, that's really where the devil starts taunting you and playing with your mind. And so you have to be very strong there, and um, you know, capturing those thoughts and taking them into captivity, and reminding the devil of who he is, and placing those thoughts where they belong, and that's under your feet. And really, you've got to stay diligent in that. That's why, you know, other than when we're sick or things like that, you know, we stay very faithful into our church attendance and different things like that. I'll have people say, well, I can't take my kids to church because they act up or blah, blah, blah. But I'm a firm believer in the fact of the way you teach them is by doing.
Right.
So they act up going to church, keep taking them to church,
That's
take them
correct.
to church, and you train them and you teach them. And eventually they learn and they become, and then they become what you want them to become, the worshipers, the realizing that Jesus is our peace, he's the center of our help, all of those things. So I think it's very important to recognize when you have been so focused on yourself and your household, to recognize the times when you need people and you need to be, you know, in a community, in a church family, and maybe going out with friends, whatever that looks like for you. You really need to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with people, and not becoming recluse and not. The other thing, of course, that is always a challenge for any single mom is finances. Um, you know, one of the final things he said to me was, "You'll never be able to make it without me." And I said, "You know, you're right. it may be a struggle, but I'll die trying to give, because for me, like the ultimate thing for me was I just wanted peace in my home again.
Yeah.
I just wanted peace in my home again. And so, yeah, there's been a lot of ups and downs, but I can promise you that I knew God told me in the beginning that he would take care of us. And there's been highs and there's been lows, but there's never been a time that we've gone without. There's never been a time where God hasn't come through right on time. There have been times where I'm like, okay, God, just reminding you. Yeah. Just reminding you, like, I'm still here just in case you forgot.
It's the 11th hour.
Yes, exactly. But he always comes through right on time. He's been so faithful. He's been so true to us. There's been times where I thought I was down to my last dime and a check shows up in the mail. There's been times where people randomly just walk up and hand me a wad of cash. I mean, so many different things. And, I don't sit here and complain of, oh, I've got another disconnect notice, or, oh, I've got this happening or that happening. I don't. I just do my best to live my life and to try to be a good steward of what I'm given, and allow God to fill the gaps. Like that's really my biggest piece of advice, is allowing God to fill the gaps.
And he does that. He's the best. He's the best gap filler I have ever met and I will ever know. He comes in just like a calm wind and just fills up every gaps in our life, whether they're emotional,
Amen.
physical, or spiritual. He's just what he does best.
Amen. Well, he owns it all. He owns it all. It's all his anyway. So
everywhere. So wherever you look and find, that's why you gotta find those places. Oh,
yes.
Wonderful talking to you, Charity. Charity, I have a question for one of my. I want to read it out to you directly because that's how they give it to me. If someone listened to you today in a dark place, who's in a dark place, feeling like there's no way out, what words of encouragement would you leave with them? I think you just said that, right?
Yeah. So, really, one thing I've learned is every time I'm getting ready for a major breakthrough or a major shift in my story, it gets real dark and it gets real scary and it gets real lonely, and times where I feel like, just giving it all up. And when I've learned, when I get into those places, to just remind myself that when it gets real dark, the darker the night, the brighter the light, right? So when it gets real dark, I know that if I can just hold on just a little while longer, that God's going to come through and he's going to work on my behalf. Yes. And, I've said time and time again, I wish I would have kept a journal. And if you're just at the beginning of your stages, I encourage you to start journaling and writing down, and you're going to be able to write down some miracles. Some of them are going to be small, some of them are going to be massive, but I promise if you start focusing on the miracles, no matter how small or how big that they are, you're going to be able, every time you go through a dark season, you're going to be able to look back on that. And when the devil starts playing tricks on your mind, you're going to be able to go, no, here's the proof. God did this on this date for me, and then he did this on this date for me. And you're going to be able to give the devil the receipts of what God has done and what he's done on your behalf.
You start counting your blessings and name them one by one.
Yes, amen.
See the awesomeness of what God has truly done.
Amen.
Wow. Okay. All right. So we have one more question. Actually, two more, and then we'll call it a wrap because of time. It's been nice talking to you, Charity. I can sense that genuineness in who you are and what you're going through, and I pray that you get to the end of it quick. I think this is just my own personal. Who am I to advise? But hey, if you're going through a divorce, make it quick. The faster you make the divorce, the easier it is for everyone to settle down, the dust to settle, and everyone begins to rebuild, especially when they're children. Because when you're dragging this whole thing out, directly or indirectly, it's impacting them. The kids need to know whether they have access to their mother, whether they have access to their dad, or whatever the situation is. Let them just know what's going on, and everybody can start to rebuild. The only people who benefit when the thing is dragged out too long are the lawyers.
Yes.
Every lawyer who's listening to me now, I know you're going to be so pissed off, but I don't care right now because truly and honestly, you're the one who's benefiting by dragging this thing out too long.
Yes.
So, guys, come together, find a way to mediate, come to the end of it, and let everyone start to rebuild. The kids need to rebuild. The adults need to rebuild. This is an adult decision. You guys came together at one time quickly. You guys are going to end up again, go your separate ways. Do it as fast as you can, and
Yes.
with a lot of wisdom and definitely peace in your mind. So the last question is, here we go. It says, what would you say to a woman listening right now who needs to feel like who feels like she's lost her own identity? Now, I know when you go through divorce, male or female, tendency that you're going to lose yourself, a part of you. There's loss in divorce. So you got to go through the steps of grief and everything else. Look at the camera, take a minute, and speak to that woman who is going through exactly what you're going through. Tell her how she can get herself back if she's losing her.
Yes, absolutely. I want to touch a little bit on what you talked about with grief. So often when somebody loses their spouse to death, we allow that person that time to grieve and that time to feel that loss, to heal and to move on, and some never truly do. Well, the same is true of divorce. You still grieve that loss of a spouse, that loss of the life you thought you were going to live and the vision of what you had for your future. That is a massive loss, and that is a huge process of grief. So I think first recognizing that and allowing yourself to understand and feel that loss, I think is a huge start. And then allowing yourself that healing process. And healing is not linear. It is ups and downs. It's a roller coaster ride. So just buckle up, Buttercup, get ready for the ride, because it is going to be a doozy. But I think as far as when you feel like you've lost yourself, for me, once that major everyday stress was kind of removed from my life, I was able to focus on myself and my needs. There were so many things. My health was a mess. I was able to really dive deep into my health, and that has actually become a passion of mine. And I actually sell vitamins and supplements for a company because of what it's helped me do. And I ended up the first year of our separation, I lost 55 pounds. Really started feeling great again, getting my health under control. The different triggers that would cause health concerns in my body, just focusing on that. Also focusing on, whenever I would feel like I'm becoming short with my children or irritable in a certain manner, realizing, okay, mama needs to fill her cup. It's time for her to do something for herself. So recognizing something that you love, maybe it's self-care. And I know when there's finances, some people can be like, well, I can't go to the spa every week. Okay, that's fine. But there's different things that you can do for self-care that's not just spa related. You can pamper yourself at home. You can do all sorts of different things. I've even traded, like I'll bake, I make really good cinnamon rolls, not to pat myself on the back, but I'll even do things where I'll trade, like, hey, I can make you a pan of cinnamon rolls for a manicure, different things like that. I've traded services. Back in the old days, that used to be very common. You would trade services.
Everything,
yeah. So there's nothing wrong with that kind of thing. And there's also, going, maybe exercising is something that is going to be an outlet for you. Maybe joining a gym or going for a walk around your neighborhood. There's a lot of different ways to fill your cup. So make sure that you're filling your cup with things that you love. If it's crafting, maybe you like going thrifting, whatever that looks like, do something for yourself to make sure that you're filling your cup too, because you can't pour from an empty cup. And as a single mom, that cup empties really fast sometimes. So you got to make sure that you're doing things to fill that cup and allowing yourself to feel the loss, but make sure you recognize where you need to work on yourself and begin that healing process.
Right. Well, I like that last thing you said. Recognize where you need to start working on yourself to help with the healing process. Because it takes two to tango. So there's some things that Ike needs to work on, and some things that Charity needs to work on. Everybody needs to work on something, because we're all a work in progress. Charity, it's been a joy having you on the podcast. But there's a tradition we have recently that we now do, and it's amazing that it's called the drop-off question. And the last guest, who doesn't know who's coming on, answered a question that somebody else had previously asked him. And now they put a question to the next person, but they don't know who it is, whether it's male, female, rich or poor. They don't know who the person is, but they asked the question. But I think this question that they asked is a very interesting one, because you should be able to answer it. And this is what our last guest did. He says, if you could go back in time before your trauma, what would you tell your pre-traumatized self?
I would tell myself that you are worth loving. I would tell myself that you are worthy of more, that you don't have to settle for less because of where you place yourself in the value ladder, if you will.
Wow.
You know, every person deserves to be loved in the manner of how God designed it. I know I'm talking a lot about divorce here, but I don't glorify divorce. I think marriage is beautiful in the way that God designed it, and when it's done proper in the way that God orchestrated it, it's a beautiful, beautiful life, and everybody deserves to live in the blessings and the favor of God.
That's correct. I completely agree with you. And again, yes, we are not glorifying divorce at all. I even tell people that I'm an advocate for marriage. In spite of all
Yes,
my experiences, I still think it's a beautiful thing. But just make sure you find the right person, someone you truly like. I know people don't go for people they love, but see, love you fall in and out of it as you go along. But someone you truly like, that you can, who's a friend, who you can just have a laugh, who you can easily forgive, who you can easily care for. That's the person you want to do life with.
absolutely. People often forget that love is an action. It's a
That's,
verb,
that's
and it's a decision you make every day.
there you go. Wow, there you go, Chad. You better write that book. Okay, that's your turn before we end the show. What would you drop off as the next question for whoever my guest is? Whatever it is.
I would want to know what is one thing that you've done in your life that you think is the best decision that you've made to set yourself up for where you are currently.
One thing they've done in their life that is the best decision that they've done to set up themselves for where they are currently. That's the question.
Mhm.
Awesome. All right. So we've got it. Whoever the next guest will have to answer that question. Charity, thank you again for all our audience across the globe who are watching this afternoon. Sorry for taking up more time, but you can see she had a great story and I couldn't resist listening
Thank
to it.
you. Thank you very much.
So, famous 3 words before we wrap up. It's much love, much peace, and more grace. Take care. Bye, Charity, and thanks again. Cheers.